Good afternoon, college football fans. It's Tuesday, October 14th. A lot of crazy games this last weekend. A lot of little nail biters and some people, thinking there were going to be more upsets than there were. I think that Indiana upset was probably enough for the whole weekend, but we saw some other games get a little crazy. And that's what college football is. That's why I love college football. That's probably why you guys love college football. Touching on the Oregon loss, Indiana came in and smoked us. If you've already seen my other video or my shorts about that video and how Oregon lost, why they lost, and you know what I think about it. The other thing that I want to talk about today is the, decision-making process for Will Stein, Oregon's offensive coordinator. Will Stein is a very decent coach. He's a good quarterback coach and developer. He has had issues in big games. He's young, and I was hoping that he would learn from his mistakes and his failures, early on as the Oregon offensive coordinator. In 2023 was his first year. He took over for Kenny Dillingham, who went to Arizona State for his alma mater to be the head coach there. And we got Stein out of UTSA. He was the offensive coordinator there. It's a different scheme that they run. It's a completely different style of football, less talented athletes. And Stein has done a really good job for the majority since he's been at Oregon. In 2023, when we matched up against Washington twice, once during the regular season, we went up to the Husky Stadium and lost in a nail biter there. There was some huge errors, I think, in his decision-making process on how he called his plays, why he called his plays, and what the results were from those plays. The biggest ones that everybody talked about, especially at the time and still bring up now, is how Oregon did not take a field goal at the end of that first half in that first game against Washington. Oregon got down to Washington's 5-yard line by running the ball incredibly well and efficiently with Bucky Irving, and Washington couldn't stop the run. So we get down to the 5-yard line, got it was 30 some seconds left in the half. Looks like we're just going to punch the ball in and score right before halftime. And Will Stein decided to boost Bo Nix's Heisman numbers and stats by calling 4 passing plays in a row. And when you're down in that type of proximity to the end zone, everything shrinks. Everything gets much more tighter, and the defense doesn't have to work as hard to cover as much space because there's not as much space to cover, especially for passing plays. So calling 4 passing plays in a row there when Washington had shown no ability to stop our run was really disappointing, because we didn't complete one of those passes. In fact, we didn't get any points going into half, right at the end of that half. And everybody in my family was like, why didn't we kick the field goal? All my friends, why didn't we just kick a field goal? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Going for it, being aggressive from that position on the field is the smart thing to do. We're playing to win. Washington showed no ability to stop our rushes. Why didn't we just continue rushing the ball? You have 4 downs to get 5 yards. We would have done it. Barring a fumble, but whatever. At that point, I'd rather be aggressive and then trust on Bucky to hold on to the ball and get the touchdown, rather than try to force passes into the most minuscule of spaces to try to get a passing touchdown. That did not help Bo or his Heisman odds. We ended up losing that game by a field goal. And then we ended up matching up against Washington again in the Pac-12 championship. Stein decided to start Bucky Irving in the Pac-12 championship, who was seriously injured 2 games before that. And he had rolled up ankle and played really bad the week before that championship game against Oregon State in the Civil War. He was getting absolutely no push. He wasn't showing his dynamic cutting ability. He wasn't showing his burst. And he got little to no yards, if not just negative yards, on every rush he had in that game. And at that point in the season, in 23, Jordan James was our backup. He was our number 2 running back. And Jordan James was looking as healthy as he had looked his entire time at Oregon, let alone in that season. So Stein decided to put Bucky out there for like the first 5 drives. Bucky got absolutely no positive yards. In fact, he got negative yardage on his rushing. I think it was like negative 12 yards in his first 4 or 5 drives of that game. Oregon ends up going down 17-0 to Washington to start that game. We didn't move the chains more than, I think, once while we were going down 17-0. I'm pulling my non-existent hair out of my head watching that game going, why are you starting Bucky when he totally showed that he's injured and not capable of giving the production that he normally would be if he was super healthy? We literally saw this last week against Oregon State. What in the hell are these coaches thinking? What is Will Stein thinking? Why would he put a guy out there who isn't 100% to try to get us off to the right start and get some sort of offensive production going just to get us in a flow and clicking, instead of putting Jordan James out there, who showed he was by far the healthier and the more productive running back for Oregon at that point in the season? Stein didn't make the adjustments. I don't know what he does. I don't know if he's just sitting there staring at an iPad, because that seems to be what he's doing every time the camera cuts to him in those moments in those games. But he's not watching what's going on the field. And it's really frustrating because, that he came into that game and they said afterwards, yeah, we had a game plan and we had practiced for it, and it just didn't go the way that we had planned, and we didn't adjust, soon enough to what was actually going on the field in the gameplay. It's like, yeah, no shit. My little sister, who doesn't know much about college football, my wife, who doesn't know much about college football, knew running Bucky Irving 5 drives to start that game was a ridiculously dumb decision. As soon as we put Jordan James in there, he got 13 yards on his first carry and moved the chains, and Oregon got clicking. And it was no looking back from that point on, but it was already too late. We were in a deficit. We were already in a hole that we couldn't climb out of because Michael Penix Jr. was a stud, dropping dime after dime to Roma Dunze and his other 2 NFL wide receivers. They had 3 NFL wide receivers on that roster, and Michael Penix, for some reason, stepped up to the moment every time he played Oregon and played his best games. I mean, he threw incredible passes, and our defensive backs just couldn't cover. We had shorter guys, and the elite speed and talent and length for Washington's wide receiver core was just way too much for us to handle. Their running game wasn't, phenomenal, Washington's, but they could do it all day long through the air. And Will Stein just did not want to accept that. And that's something that is really, really unforgivable as an Oregon fan, to not see your OC pay attention to what's going on the field and then adjust to it in a normal way, in a normal fashion that would actually, be adequate to yeah, all right, one guy is getting absolutely no production. We have another guy right, on the sideline waiting to go in there and get his chance. And everybody in the fan base knows that the guy that's on the sideline is going to do way better than the guy that's in the game, except for the OC, except for the guy who it's his job to know who is his hot hand at the time, to read the vibe, read the sideline, read the energy, read the health and status of your guys, and go, okay, right now you're just not the dude. I mean, it's a team effort. But for some reason, it seemed like he had to force Bucky being in there because that was what his play, schemes were designed to do. So he cost us that game. We lost that game by a field goal. If we don't go down 17-0 in that game and we start to click like we did after, we put Jordan James in, we win that game. Bo Nix gets the Heisman. If he won that game, he was going to be the Heisman winner. Because the SEC, biased ass, bitch ass, pathetic voters would have voted for Bo Nix because he was an SEC legacy guy. They love to claim credit. They love to go, hey, yeah, he's from the SEC. That's the SEC. Well, he was at the SEC until he transferred to Oregon because the SEC was so toxic, and his fan base in particular at Auburn was so toxic and delusional that they thought he sucked. So Oregon picked him up and made him a Heisman finalist right off the bat. Will Stein didn't just cost Oregon a berth into the playoffs that year by not beating Washington in the Pac-12 championship. He cost Bo Nix a Heisman. He cost Oregon another Heisman. And then he did very similar thing. You know, I was hoping he would learn from that. It sounded like they learned from that. It sounded like they actually accepted and acknowledged the mistakes that they made in that Pac-12 championship after the Pac-12 championship, which, again, as an Oregon fan, as just a college football fan, is so incredibly frustrating and hard to come to grips with when you know you have the talent to do it. It's just the guy that's putting, you know, the players in position to go out there and show what they can do and prove what they can do. It's just shitting the bed. He's just asleep, or he's over there delusional himself. Will Stein is delusional when it comes to big game moments, apparently. I don't know if it has to do with his youth. I don't know if he's not getting enough sleep because he's got so many, you know, young kids and in his family, and he's staying up at night and he can't get sleep or whatever it is, but he totally fucks up like he did against Indiana here at Autzen Saturday. The play schemes that he had designed. And when you're going into a game like Indiana or any game, OCs like Will Stein have a whole list of plays that they have designed thinking that those are going to be, you know, effective, and they're going to utilize those in order. You know, it's like a script for how they want to start the game. So their offense, they practice for that. They get into it. They know what they're going to be doing play after play after play, unless something major happens where they just adjust to it and they go, hey, let's do this. We're seeing this immediately. This is an advantage for us. Let's just utilize this. And Will Stein did not have a great scheme for that game, and that's one thing. I mean, you can have an idea of how a game's going to go and then have it not go that way, and that's not necessarily on you. I mean, that's, you got to, until the ball's snapped, that first snap, you don't know what's going to happen on that field. You don't know how their defense is going to react. You don't know how they've schemed up. You don't know where they are and how they are going to, I guess, be prepared to try to stop your offensive, you know, attempts. But he didn't watch the game. He was over there on his iPad, and they showed him after the one touchdown pass to Benson from Dante, over there on the bench, his head down, just looking at stuff. He didn't even look up to give Dante a high five. I mean, he's just over there like a freaking bookworm, just into his favorite book, tuning everything else in the stadium out. Shame on you, Will Stein. Shame. You let your whole team down. You let your whole offense down. You let Dante Moore down. And I'm not saying that it's all on Will Stein, but there are glaring plays that are just like, why would you call that? Why would you call that screen again? Absolutely just getting blown up. Their defense is stacking the box. They know Oregon's not trying to stretch the field. They're not utilizing their speed against the secondary. And all they have to do is stay home, stay disciplined, and they're going to get a tackle, and they're going to stop us, and we're going to have to punt to them. And that's exactly what happened. And Will Stein didn't get the ball to Kenyon Sadiq, the best tight end in the nation. He didn't get the ball to Decory Moore, the best freshman wide receiver in the nation, in that first half at all. At all. And it's just like, dude, what the fuck are you thinking? What are you seeing that's telling you to do these other things that are clearly not being productive at all, not moving the chains with any type of like regularity or consistency? And you're basically just, you know, hoping that Dante's going to pull out, you know, a really phenomenal play by scrambling or by, you know, by improvising off of what you're trying to, you know, have him do. And he didn't pay attention to any of that defensive pressure that was coming. If he had, he would have told Dante to hand the ball off. Would have called way more running plays just to take the pressure off Dante, at least for several snaps in a row, so Dante can breathe, so he can start to see the field, so he can start to understand what the defense is doing and how they're doing it. And he didn't do that. In fact, he got more and more stubborn and thought like, yeah, I guess if I just force this, you know, we'll come back, we'll find our offense. Doesn't matter how far we are in a deficit in points to Indiana, we'll get clicking and then we'll win the game. And that didn't happen. Again, you know, lack of adjustment in game, lack of awareness in game, lack of just fucking reading the game, reading the field, reading the team, reading the energy, reading the room. Will Stein totally fucked up again, and that is on him. Dante, made some very, very youthful, decisions, which were not great. And that comes with experience. It comes with being pressured so much by that defense. It comes with being rattled, not being in the flow, being in the zone, being in a rhythm. And I think that there was a lot of other pressure going on in Dante mentally because of the bye week, because of beating Penn State. I think Dante was definitely affected by all the national hype around him, calling him a number one NFL pick, calling him the number one, candidate for the Heisman. And you'd like to see your young stud quarterback use that kind of hype and all that pressure from the outside to, catalyze his own, juice to get him pumped up to go, get him motivated, go, yeah, they finally see what I'm doing. They finally see how talented I am. Now I'm going to really show them. It seemed like maybe Dante was in his own head and allowed some of that outside noise to affect his not just potential future, but his immediate future. And for a guy like Dante, who seems so emotionally sensitive and intelligent, I think that having all of that pressure and everybody saying, hey, yeah, he's going to be the first guy drafted, he's not going to come back to Oregon, and, all the other things that they were predicting would happen if he continued to play like he was playing, before Penn State and in the whiteout, probably just took his focus away. And, I think he really does want to be at Oregon again next year. And I think that there was probably a duality there between what everybody was saying and manifesting for him in his future and what he really wants to happen in his future. And I don't know if he had the support around him to help him focus through all of that and just go, doesn't matter what happens at the end of the season. It doesn't matter what happens in April. It's all up to you no matter what. What happens on this field right now is up to you too. You don't have to pay attention to those outside voices. FIBU. And nobody else matters but us. You're the captain of this offense. You are the dude that's going to lead us or not into prosperity through this season. And I think just the youth and all of the pressure and all of the upheaval of kind of his continuity going on in there and being undervalued or being underranked and having everybody still doubt him really was not beneficial, I guess, to his performance and to his mental state. Some people thrive being the underdog, and it seems like Dante is one of those types of guys. And some of those same people that thrive as an underdog wilt as a top dog. Dante wilted in that moment, but it was also so predicated upon what Will Stein was doing and how he was not adjusting to what was going on the field, that it was kind of like a perfect storm of negativity. And man, I feel for him. Dante's such an awesome dude. It seems like he's a great player, not just, in the locker room, but outside the locker room. Seems like he's got a huge heart. Seems like he's got a good soul. And I know that he will have a prosperous future if he just focuses on himself and his friends, his teammates, and his family, like Dan Lanning, and just goes out and plays his game and doesn't pay attention to what everybody else has to say. With that being said, though, Will Stein has to put him in advantageous positions. You cannot continue to just let this dude get smashed, hit, sacked. And if Will Stein doesn't, make those adjustments and has another game like he had at Autzen against Indiana, where he's just absolutely not paying attention at all, not making any critical adjustments, and failing at being the offensive coordinator for Oregon. And Oregon needs to go find a new offensive coordinator. I wish Will Stein the very best of luck. I really respect him as a human. I wish him nothing but the best, long life and prosperity. But if you aren't up to the Oregon standard of being able to actually be a coach, especially a game day coach, you got to go, dude. You got so many people who are saying that you're ready for a head coach job. Go be a head coach. Oregon will be just fine. Give us a new, we'll promote from within, or we'll go find a new offensive genius, savant, and we'll bring them in and we'll start building, with a new guy. That being said, let's go Ducks. I think there's a huge test against Rutgers this week. We got to travel across the nation. It's basically as far as Oregon can travel in conference. And Rutgers is decent. They're not a just straight, crappy team like they have been throughout their program history in general. So his hopefully will be a great bounce back game for Oregon where they can just, put that game behind them and focus on the future. Because if you're going to dwell on the past, you're going to miss all of the opportunities in the future to succeed. Go Ducks. Let's do it.